This week, Paula Januszkiewicz, founder and CEO at Secure, joins us to talk about penetration testing trends, how to get the most from a penetration test, and share some stories from the trenches. In the security news, feel free to cry a bit. Honey tokens are the shiny new hotness, except they're not really new. It's fixed in the future, backdooring Electron. Should we move to passkeys? The turbo button. Why Cisco hates SMBs. Old vulnerabilities are new again. MSI, BootGuard, and some FUD. Fake tickets, AI hacking, prompt injection, and everyone's favorite, the S-bomb bombshell. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly. This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. When organizations face poor web performance, challenges building modern applications at scale, or need to reduce operational and development costs, they turn to Fastly. Fastly's distributed edge network means your business can unleash its growth potential without worrying about scaling your infrastructure, whether growth of users, transaction volume, or geographic expansion. Get the speed, security, and edge cloud innovation you need to deliver profitable and engaging experiences. Visit securityweekly.com/Fastly for more information or to speak to an expert.
And welcome to the show. But first, let me introduce you to a man coming to you in super low resolution, 240 by 320 P for pixels, Mr. Paul Asadorian.
Welcome, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. This is episode number 784, being recorded on, I lost my teleprompter button, being recorded on May 10th, 2023, right here in G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island. And to my left, the illustrious Mr. Larry Pesce is here with us.
How's it going?
Hey, it's going good. I'd be better if my Marauder thing was working on my ESP32.
Yeah, that's bizarre. It's not your Wi-Fi stack. It's not, and it's because it's not my Wi-Fi stack either.
Yeah, so I think Josh said it best, user error. Mr. Josh Marpet is here with us. Josh, welcome.
When in doubt, it's the user fucking it up.
Yep. And I probably have. This is after I overcame several problems and a lot of reading.
Yeah, like, reading the manual.
Reading the manual helps. Reading the manual helps.
I had a flashback today. Like when I got my first Mac and I said, Paul, how does this work? And you said, double click. Yeah. And how does this work? Double click. And you're like, hey, Larry, how does this work? I got an error. I said, push the button.
I need to delete something. Drag it to the trash can. Mr. Sam Bound is here with us. Sam, welcome.
Good evening. Glad to be here.
It's nice to have you. Mandy Logan is here with us somewhere, too. I don't have her up on the screen.
Oh, there she is.
See if I can find her. There she is. Oh. Hey, Mandy. How's it going?
Good evening. It's going well. I just realized how much I miss staff picks at Blockbuster Video.
Oh,
yes.
I was looking here. I have like this Blockbuster lanyard. You can see there.
Oh my God.
That's vintage.
I know. And then going like, wow, what did Jim and Katie and Daniel and all those wonderful people that picked things, what did they go on to do?
Yeah, I like that so much better than what we have today. It's usually just bots. In the digital world, it's never like an actual person's opinion. It's just bots.
You know where I like staff picks? The Savory Grape.
The Savory Grape. I was thinking the same thing when she said that, Larry. That's a local liquor store here in Rhode Island that happens to be right next to a Tesla supercharger as well, which is very convenient.
Also happens to be right down the street from my orthopedic surgeon. So
yes, there's a lot of medical offices over there too. Yes. Let's see. Select Security Weekly host and SC Media. We're delivering in-depth reporting, analysis, and interviews on site at RSA Conference 2023. If you were unable to join us in person or didn't manage to catch the video live stream from Broadcast Alley, access all RSA 2023 coverage, including video interviews with the leaders from the community by visiting securityweekly.com/RSAC. Paula Januszkiewicz is the founder and CEO of Secure and Secure Academy, which she established back in 2008. She is an enterprise security MVP, Honorable Microsoft Regional Director for CEE, and a world-class cybersecurity expert consulting with customers from across the globe. In 2017, Paula graduated from Harvard Business School. She delivers keynotes at some of the largest conferences such as RSA, Black Hat, Sector Canada, and many others. She was rated the #1 speaker at Microsoft Ignite and Black Hat Asia 2019 and known for her unique stage presence that's well received among diverse audiences, often gathering thousands of people. Top it all off, she has access to the Windows source code. Paula, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Absolutely a pleasure. And I could not introduce myself better. Thanks for that.
Oh, well, thank you. Yes, you made it very easy. I had to actually trim that down, so you can go read Paula's full bio in the show notes. So it's wonderful to have you here with us this evening, Paula. Paula, how'd you get your start in information security?
I was always interested in computers, so to say, and I have more scientific mind than more like, classic art minds. My sense of art is as flat as ironing board. And long story short, since I got my first computer, I continued and I was studying IT in general. I have like 2 degrees in that, and I was always into computers, also administering, the school network. So this is pretty much the story. And I was working in a consulting company, and there was also a story behind it. I opened Secure.
Very nice, Paul. Where are you from? Where were you studying and such?
So I'm from Poland, and I was studying in Poland in the technical university.
Mm-hmm.
So the IT, so in network security and also the information security and administration. And later on, I decided to put a little bit more effort into understanding business. That's why I went to Harvard Business School for the GMP program. And I'm CEO of the company, but nobody really teaches you how to manage things in IT. We're more techie geeks. So a little bit of insight, I thought it's needed. So that's the background.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. Most of us, like myself, as an example, if we want to learn more about business, like I go listen to some podcasts and read some books. You decide to go to Harvard and get your MBA, so that's mad respect. That's amazing.
Yeah, I went to YouTube University.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it was maybe also a bit of an effort, but not really from the material perspective, but more from time perspective.
Yeah.
So when you are already established and you work and you've got the company and you have to have calls with your team every day, then that's a bit of a challenge. And actually, it was a fun time because every time I was waking up at 4 a.m., catching up with Europe, having calls with my team, continuing on the lectures, and then when I was finishing a day, there was also homework to be done. So it was every day. It was like 5, maybe 4 hours of sleep. So a bit of a challenging time for sure.
Definitely. Paula, what led the decision for you to create the company that you run today?
It is actually a funny story because I was working in a consulting company, and there was a situation where there was a bank simply that came to me and they said, "Hey, we want you to do the pen test for us at the time," and so on. And I felt very, very privileged, and I said, "Great! So I'm working at that company over there, so I'm bringing this project for them so that they can simply earn on the project." But also I said that I need to be a manager of that project because I was very young at the time, and I need to pretty much like get maybe some cut. And I had a boss that wasn't very nice, and when I was done with the project, I was traveling to the customer side and literally called the guys from the station out there that I'm going to be in like 30 minutes because we had a scheduled meeting. And they said like, "Hey, we don't have a meeting today. Your boss actually called us and he rescheduled the meeting to be in 1 week from now on." And I said, "Okay, what's going on?" And I called the boss and I said, "Well, that's not very cool because I don't know about that." And it's just a waste of time. And he said, oh, if you were managing the project well, you would check the portal when I actually publish this information. I said, okay, I don't want to have a boss anymore. So this is how Secure was created.
I love it.
Love it.
Frustrated with your manager, so you create your own company. That's great. No,
Yeah, and that now the only manager you can get frustrated with is you.
And customers.
That goes
They're not
beyond
our
that.
manager.
Yes. Yeah.
Customers are our bosses, and this is what I realized later on. But it's a little bit of a different perspective, so it's not too bad.
Yeah. Good point.
Paul, how long have you been doing penetration testing?
Well, I think I shall say maybe even more than 20 years. It's really hard to say, but officially 20 years, because this is the time where I started to work. And earlier I was just having fun. It wasn't really for money. So yeah, the money-wise, 20 years.
Paul, how has pen testing changed? I feel like, I haven't been officially pen testing like with an actual title as a pen tester, so to speak, since like 2008-ish or so. And a lot has changed even since then. So how has pen testing evolved?
First of all, nowadays we have so many tools that are available. Lots of people are engaged in cybersecurity. We are seeing each other here and so on. And there is GitHub. And GitHub is a great repository of various tools that you can use. Not everything is perfect, of course, but as long as you know what you are looking for, you can either get a tool or simply write a tool. And the toolkit that you got right now, it's massive in comparison to what was in the past. Also, I think that in the past, it was a little bit easier to deliver pen tests because cybersecurity awareness in general wasn't really there. Also in terms of IT, in terms of security people, they were not even there. So long story short, when you were getting into infrastructure, you were simply getting access to it. Yeah, so 100% success. And all of these attacks that were there, even 20 years ago, they are still working till today. So that's also very interesting. Of course, it's a matter of connecting the dots. So sometimes the point of entry to find it may not be the easiest. But once you find it, then you perform the lateral movement in a very similar way like we were doing in the past. So in summary, I think we've got more tools right now. We can educate ourselves better. Things about pen testing in general are more available. Companies, though, are a little bit more secure, but it's not their role.
Yeah, I agree, Paul. I think it's a very good assessment that it was easier, but easier doesn't quite cover it. And you elaborated on that, I thought, very nicely, in that I feel like as pen testers, like the same technique might work. We might get to that phase, but now there's like multiple layers that we have to jump through. Like we can't just go through there's a firewall port open and we get on a host and now we've got everything, right? We can't just land on an endpoint system. We have to be mindful of, am I going to get caught by EDR? And then if I'm not going to get caught by EDR, how do I build the C2 so that it doesn't get picked up on? And I think that has gotten a lot harder as time has gone on.
Totally agreed.
Where do you, any other questions? Sorry, Larry, did you have, or anyone else questions along the lines?
Not at the moment.
So you said there's a lot of tools out there. So like, how does someone start in getting in penetration testing? Because that's also something I agree with you, right? GitHub is like, it's kind of like the chat GPT of pen testing and research. Like, oh, I need a tool that can reverse engineer like Intel boot guard blobs is, a recent example. It's like, oh, hey, look, there's some research that's posted on GitHub and there's a tool that does maybe something similar. How do you navigate these waters if you're just getting into pen testing?
Yeah, good question. I think that nowadays, because of the availability of the tools and that there is so many of them, it might be a little bit overwhelming. Therefore, I think that's my very, very, I would say, well-established opinion out there that in order to start pen testing, we need to start from learning how operating systems work, so that we know later what we want. So I'm talking here about Linux, Windows internals, so anything really that is gonna put into pieces different areas of the operating system so that when we are, for example, performing the escalation of the privileges, we know what is actually going on. And I think that also the good pen tester should not only, of course, know operating system, but also the ways inside operating system by leveraging built-in, let's say, Windows tools, for example, to achieve something. Like, just imagine doing the pen test without any tools, and you have only operating system available for yourself. So I've been in projects like this. I don't think they're great, but that is what we are talking about. So how to, for example, break Windows with just using the built-in Windows tools. So the more we know about infrastructure, about operating system, we know it to the bones, like how privileges, permissions, services work, and so on, the better we are able to make a use of tools and the better choices we are able to make. Because right now, when we are like, oh, I want to jump into pen testing, I go to GitHub, I type in pentest tools word and so on, and then what do I actually use? Why do I need to use it? What's the point? But my goal ultimately is going to be to take over someone's identity in the operating system, perform some actions, get access to some data. So I need to know how these tools execute. And therefore, coming back to what I said before, knowing more about platforms that we're going to be pen testing, it's a must. And I cannot imagine being in cybersecurity without knowing internals of the operating systems.
Yeah. And what I find interesting about that, Paula, is that I think it can be overwhelming, even to look at the big three operating systems, to go, I got to know all of them. My recommendation is always get to know one really well. And even a programming language, get to know one really well. And when you move on to the next one, or you're presented with a new challenge, you can be like, oh, that's kind of similar to the thing I studied a lot. Is that also like your advice? Because I feel like in pen testing, if you're super familiar with something, there's always the next challenge that you're like, oh, well, that's kind of similar. And that allows us to learn more easily.
Absolutely agreed. And it's a great feeling to have that sometimes also from the perspective of forensic, when you are analyzing something, because you know how that operating system works, then you are not having complete picture, like complete set of data to analyze, but then you're going to say like, oh, I know how it works. So by simple guesses, I can get into conclusions that will be logical, that will make sense. It's very, very convenient feeling to have. And that's what I'm always saying, that if we start our adventure in pen testing, in general in cybersecurity, it's an easy start because you've got an operating system that you use anyway, and you've got books available about that. So start reading that, and then you're going to make up your mind about what you're going to need later.
I think for technical roles, I've always said that you have to understand how things work. You have to understand how to fix things. Then you can start understanding how to hack things. Is that kind of your philosophy as well?
Very much, very much. Like nothing beats Windows internals, Linux internals, and so on. And for example, if we take the tool of Benjamin Delpy, which is Mimikatz, I mean, of course, it's exciting to get all these credentials, but how do they actually work? Like, are they useful for you? Like, what kind of like use cases you can make out of that? If you, for example, get SHA-1 from the LSAs, like it might sound useless, but actually, when you know data protection API, you can take SHA-1 and you leverage it, for example, for the local accounts and so on. Yeah, so there is sometimes like in these tools, there might be more than we at the very first moment might think that we're going to use. So if we know the details, then we can start thinking, connecting the dots, and the tool that is originally, for example, created for extracting credentials, you might actually use just to provide you some data that you're going to use within the other tool. Like in Mimikatz, for example, you've got an option to list the cache log on data. I mean, what's the usage of that? Pretty much not much. But if you think forensically, then it's going to give you information about the last logon date if, for example, security log has been removed. So it's very useful. So in general, we need to know what we want by knowing the background, and the tool is just to make it a little bit more handy.
I think that people that know these platforms really well, now that I think about it, Paul, when you describe this, they don't think that they're hackers, but they kind of are. And we as hackers, we kind of can pick their brain. So like, if I didn't know Windows internals as well as I should have, I knew that the Windows sysadmin that we had was really good because they had studied it for a long time. Yep. So I'd be like, dude, what do I do? I got these credentials. Like, what would you do with them, and how do they work? And they knew, and that combination of knowledge is very dangerous as an attacker. You're like, oh, now I know what to do.
Some of the things over the years that I've experienced, some of the best testers I encountered were those that were former sysadmins that were responsible for building the environment, and now they go and break it. So
significant percentage of security starts in system administration. A significant percentage of blue team starts in system administration, like 80%. In red team, a good sysadmin is a dangerous red teamer.
Agreed. I think, and so there's a lot of people that are like, oh, well, you don't have to be technical to get into the field. I just want to course correction. We're talking about getting into pen testing, like a very technical role. It's not the only role in information security, but this is a technical role, and I believe that you need some of this background and experience in order to really excel at it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not the only one. You've got to, like, it used to be just security, right? But now we've got different branches of that. Yeah, so we've got incident response, we've got forensic, we've got system administration that is more towards security. We've got pentesting, and then you've got, of course, pentesters that do mobile apps, web apps, internal, external pentests. So that differs. And in general, for example, to do the pentesting of websites, then you need to know, for example, how the query is supposed to be built, what kind of language is used over there, and so on, what kind of technologies. So it's kind of the same, but there is the moment where we've got a tree where we are just taking a different path that we grow into.
Yeah, I also agree that web application engineers make the best web app pen testers because they know how the secret sauce is made. And usually that's framework and language dependent as well. Well, JavaScript's probably the biggest common denominator. What else has changed in pen testing over time, Paula?
Well, okay. Well, first of all, I think it's a bit of a commodity. I think it's just like it stopped to be exclusive. It's more of a thing that you have to put into your cybersecurity strategy. So every company talks about it, yeah. And if they don't, they are making a mistake, yeah? Because we have to test ourselves. And in the past, cybersecurity or pen testing has been considered to be a kind of like maybe not a waste of money, but it's like you spend some money on the pen test, on the service, and that's what you get, just more work, because they're going to tell you that you did that wrong, and so on. So pen testing in general was not treated with a priority. Now we understand cybersecurity as a part of, in general, business risk assessment. So companies take that into consideration. Therefore, I would say that there's just more job, and more companies are aware that it needs to be done.
How have technologies like breach and attack simulation and attack surface monitoring or management impacted pen testing? Does it make companies better? Does it make the pen test harder, or does it just help pen testers focus?
Yeah, I love the question. Right now, especially when we are talking about AI and so on, machine learning, then we are absolutely overflowing with solutions that are AI-based, machine learning-based, or just name it. A person who is not really familiar with the details of these technologies, I think, has a very hard time right now, because we can take a decision that we're going to, for example, choose this solution because someone just sells it well. It has a lot of buzzwords, and it's supposed to do security for us. But reality is that we implement solutions that aren't always good, aren't always with a good background, aren't tested. And then it appears that, for example, after 2-3 years, that solution is not really performing very well. So the company goes to consultants and then says, hey, I've got this. Is this a good choice? Okay, so let's spend money on something else. So in general, cybersecurity, it's a very lucrative business. And I think what changed toward and within the technology around security, pen testing, and so on, is that we have many solutions that do lots of promises. And we should just be very careful about what we choose. And cybersecurity sells well too, Therefore, CISOs have a very hard time.
Of all the companies you've pen tested, Paula, and the ones that are the most difficult to get in, what do they have in common?
Capable security personnel and budget that is well spent. I think these two factors. And of course, it doesn't mean that if you got 7 anti-spam filters, they're gonna do a good job. Which literally, we have a customer that they got 3, and none of them was actually configured well, and we managed to get in. So here we go. But
it's a firewall. NE is a legitimate firewall rule.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah, here we go. So they thought that this is the way to minimize the risk, but apparently it wasn't. But these two factors are the ones that would make things better.
I want to harp on the quality security personnel, because I've heard that often described as folks that work in IT and security that work really well as a team. Do you often find that the hardest companies get into have qualified personnel that know how to work well together? I think that's a dangerous combination.
Absolutely agreed. And I think teamwork in general in cybersecurity is everything, while at the same time it's very hard because cybersecurity personnel in general, well, I meet these guys technically at every customer site. They're also quite special. Yeah. So we all know that the social part isn't really the strongest part. These are true geeks. They have to be focused every day and so on. And they want to figure out things. So these are ever learning people. They have to have the ultimate stream of news and knowledge coming every day, because otherwise it feels very inconvenient. Therefore, this is the situation where it's hard to share. So to build a well-established security team that actually performs very well and delivers, like you said, it's a hard job to do, but definitely, I totally agree with this. If there's a team that is cooperating and they have good tools in hands, they have for example, well-established monitoring and so on, or well-established learning plan for the red teaming, for pen testing and so on, then that's a success.
I can see that needs organizational support because, well, first, if a team is there for a while together, they're going to develop a rapport that really speaks. Like if Larry and I were to be defending the same network, Larry and I trust each other, so we would work really well together, because I think something's wrong there. He'd be like, oh, well, Paul thinks the same thing. Like if you see something or I see something, like we trust each other to go, that's something we need to investigate. But people tend to move around in security, so you don't get that consistency. What can organizations do to retain those folks on the blue team side?
Yeah, it's a problem that everybody has right now, and especially because we are. Someone said that we are like 1.5 million soldiers short. That was, I think, from Cybersecurity Ventures nowadays. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, cybersecurity is understaffed. Therefore, when some other company comes in with a better offer, people may take it. So for them, in order not to take it, it's simply important to have a good salary, because it's also one of the factors, but not always that's the factor, but definitely to keep them interested in different things that they are doing. Yes, so to bring them challenges and so on. And I think that's the most important factor. So that they are not bored at their work, they feel that the teamwork works well, that they have challenges, that they feel that they are also growing themselves within the company, learning every day, and the rest comes later. And that good atmosphere with a learning opportunity, I think this is something that when you create that and you maintain it every day, this is what keeps the team together.
Speaking of teams, it leads me into my next question, and that was, there is two schools of thought. As an enterprise, I want the same pen test team externally to be testing my network every single quarter, every single year, whatever it is. Or every time I get a pen test, I want to use someone new to get a fresh perspective. What's your advice for organizations in which school of thought you think they should adopt?
I think actually both, because as a vendor, we also receive that strategy from various companies. And sometimes we, for example, sign an agreement for like 2 years or 3 years. Sometimes we just do it once and that's it. And in a couple of years, maybe they're going to come back to us. I feel that if you, for example, choose only one company, of course, you can miss out. But at the same time, you can gain quite a lot of things because that company or that vendor or the team, whatever, becomes more familiar with your infrastructure and some issues that could be not observed just during one penetration test, which I feel quite often it's just simply, in many cases, too short. So you got, for example, a week or 2 or 3, but hackers have more time. So eventually, if the company becomes familiar with set of vulnerabilities that they already found out that has been patched or not, then they are able to gain more information. And the new team is going to search for similar / the same first low-hanging fruits and also a similar set of vulnerabilities. So it's there's this one big thing that these teams they have in common, yeah. So they have to figure out the basics, and I think that's a little bit of waste of time. So we should have like both approaches at the same time. We should be cooperating with a team of experts that know our infrastructure well, and every certain time bring another team to have a different approach.
How do you feel about adversary emulation? I know there's some companies offering this service where it's a very specifically scoped engagement that is typically, I believe, like 3 to 6 months. The goal is not to discover as many ways in as you can. The goal is to find, a direct up path and maintain access for as long as you can. Is there value, and if so, what value does that provide?
Yeah, good point. I think that kind of an approach is very romantic, almost like putting the shoes of Angelina Jolie from the Hackers movie or something like that.
Rollerblades. Yeah. You do that engagement in rollerblades. I got you.
Right. So like spending that much time by just searching for this one little thing over there, and also like regarding to your previous question, yes, having that team doing this for 6 months, that's okay, but at first I think it's a little bit of waste of time. So if the company is well established in cybersecurity and they really do everything that they could to secure themselves and they're very mature in that, why not doing that? But I would treat it more like a cherry on the top, while when the dessert is broken, you'll not eat it. Yeah, so that's kind of how I would describe the red teaming understood in that kind of a way.
I think there's a much smaller amount of companies that are ready for that style of engagement, is what I hear you saying, Paula.
Definitely. So if they already did lots of pen tests and they're not getting into anything new and it's time to bring some kind of a change, why not? Yeah, it's interesting. Definitely, they want to know what would be the path, but this is this team of people spending time on a certain paths, and when there's going to be another team of people, they're going to maybe find out different paths. Why like that? Because time helps it. And if you got a regular pen test that lasts like 3 weeks or something, then most of the people will find similar things if they are good. But when you got 6 months, then you can definitely spread your wings. Therefore, having one team for that might be a little bit of a miss out.
No, agreed. Mandy, did you have questions? Sorry.
I do. Well, first I want to go back and tell you just how happy I am and think it's fantastic that you were able to pursue the business side and getting an education in order to support your career. And it makes me think of getting all the technical skill in IT, doing everything that it took to get to that technical part. Reminds me of friends I know that are doctors, and they've said the same thing. Like they got through all the medical side and all of the detailed parts, but they were never shown how to run a business, how to actually handle their practice, what to actually do with employees or the teams or anybody else that they are managing. So first off, I think it's fantastic that you went after that and made it happen. And I'm sorry you had so little sleep for so long.
Thanks so much.
And since we're talking about penetration testing and the toolkits, I was wondering, since the release of the CQ or Secure penetration toolkit at Black Hat Asia 2019, are there updates to that toolkit? And if so, where are they?
Okay.
Where are they? I want to know.
Yes. So it depends really what kind of also arsenal sessions we got accepted, but we do definitely continue to write tools, and we released since that time a couple of good tools. Pandemic has probably slowed down things. I think I can just blindly say that, but yeah, there are some new tools released, and we maintain them all on the resources secureacademy.com.
Okay. Which I do think should be mentioned to our listeners, the Secure Academy, especially I was looking at your 2023 master's program. I think it's cybersecurity master program you have going on. And will you just mention, I really appreciate the focus of your Secure Academy, and that everything is so focused on field notes, that it's focused on, this is what we've actually done. This is where these things work. So can you tell us more about the Academy?
Yeah, of course. So the reason why I actually in the past created Academy, truly, it was because I was simply annoyed by the boredom that I had while doing the penetration tests. Every time I was getting into the customer side, or in general the team, we were saying just the same things, and when you see the same things that you can get in with, it's like you stop feeling maybe not ambitious, but you don't feel that discoverous. Yeah. So you find that point of entry and you're like, oh yeah. And then, of course, you're going to search for the other ones, but that's just like something that happens everywhere. So that's why Academy was created. And we've got over like 40 master classes over there right now. And I thought that it would be lovely to have a educational tool to help teams, people in general, to grow in cybersecurity. And everything that is in Academy comes from the practice. And most of the classes are coming from like us being quite frustrated about things being the same or misconfigured in the projects that we got. So we're like, okay, let's write a class about that. It's kind of like this. And we hope that it's delivering and it's practical.
Do you have a class on how to apply patches? Because I feel like a lot of people could benefit from that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we have an article in the next segment, Paula, but having worked in vulnerability management, like, I know it's a hard problem, but it's also frustrating when we're evaluating the security posture of an organization. And the answer is really just apply more patches more quickly to everything that you have. And I think people get hung up on priority and all that other thing, but I don't know. I can sit here on my pulpit and say you should apply patches, but I know there's a lot that goes into that. What is your, I mean, you have to give advice on this all the time. What's your advice for people to just get better at really vulnerability remediation?
Mm-hmm. I think that when we think about the infrastructure security, that of course goes in layers. And whenever there is an attack happening or whenever there is a vulnerability, question is about what? So how that vulnerability gets exploited. Because if it's about exploitation, then we've got a layer that is the anti-exploitation layer, like for example, exploit guard and things like that. When we think about just the code being executed, then we talk about the antivirus solution, or we talk about like whitelisting and so on. On the other hand, when there is a code that, or like whatever solution, malicious solution that tries to connect through the network, question is, how do we manage processes that we don't know that connect through the network? Or if there is an injection into operating system process, why don't we manage that too? So it's all about the risk assessment and the risk management in these zones, in these sections. So one thing, of course, would be to apply patches, but on the other hand, would be why don't we, for example, rethink our strategy and implement the solutions into the most commonly seen attack vectors. So, for example, if we are afraid of vulnerabilities, if we do implement anti-exploitation layer, then that's going to minimize the risk significantly. Of course, it's not the only option over there, but the question is, do we understand it and do we address it? And it's more maybe a little bit of a business language right now, but definitely revising the strategy and rethinking it in a way that, okay, most of the attacks, for example, right now come from phishing. So what should I do? Well, phishing, that could be what? Link that I click, some code that I run. It could be maybe even in a form of a macro. So here I have to rethink how to protect, let's say, Excel process and so on. And all of these things, they have answers.
Yeah,
today they have answers, and that's very cool.
And the answer isn't always a patch, as you very or astutely pointing out that when I talk to most pen testers, they're like, I don't really try not to rely on vulnerabilities because they come and go. I try and rely on a strategy of just getting stuff to execute without having to leverage a vulnerability, because it's going to be a mixed bag per environment.
Totally agreed. And all of these things are manageable. And luckily, we live in time that technology responds to what's happening right now. And rethinking that, it's a key to success.
I feel like it's really hard to secure a Microsoft Active Directory environment today. Do you have advice for people? I think it was last time Tyler was on the show, we were talking about this, that there's just, I read about all these new techniques all the time with privilege escalation. And I'm like, well, can't you configure that? And then I'm like, can't you configure that? And I'm like, Tyler, like, at what point does nothing works because you've just configured your way out of making everything work to prevent against all these exploit vectors?
Unfortunately, in Active Directory default, it's not an option. One of the things is to monitor privilege access and implement privilege access management. Another part, it's well-established monitoring. But I think about it in a little bit of a different way. Hacker, in order to do anything, has to take over some kind of an identity. Mm-hmm. And however not romantic that sounds, there needs to be an account that's going to be overused, that later on will be or not be able to do something. And we have to monitor these accounts. We need to make sure that identity can be only used in a certain limited way. So the key to that is to support yourself with some either third-party option or another part. It could be, for example, Azure AD, where you have lots of monitoring capabilities, prevention capabilities that you can add to your licensing, because that's another angle over there. But there's still lots of companies that have Active Directory on-prem.
Yes, for sure. But it also sounds like, I mean, you say monitoring, but you also mean coupled with your earlier statement about highly skilled and trained personnel in the security team to know what to look for. Because you can monitor all day long, but if you don't know how to look for the anomalies, even if you have AI helping you, you still have to know, you have to have competent and skilled security people.
Absolutely, yes. But also because we have a huge shortage in cybersecurity personnel, we have to surround ourselves with solutions that's going to provide us some answers and automate things. So when we think, for example, about CM systems, you've got a possibility to implement predefined rules that are designed by the vendor that you get the CM system from. And it's going to be a set of, let's say, 200 rules that would always have to be there if you want to have a smart monitoring. So you feel like, oh, phew, at least I don't need to figure it out. I don't need to know that I have to monitor that event ID in that kind of a context and so on. So my knowledge may not be complete, but because I'm paying for a solution, I got the complete set of rules that's going to tell me what's going on. So I know it's a little bit of a shortcut, but sometimes companies do not have other option.
But what's interesting about that is our conversation that we had with Rob Fuller last week about Jurassic malware, and he even extended that to techniques. So that set of 200 YAR rules or whatever, right, that you get from the vendor, to make it down to 200, they had to leave off attacks from way back when, But if you reintroduce an attack or technique that's super old, now you're evading defenses. So do we just need to be more comprehensive in our detection and never let anything fall out of scope? Is that pretty much the answer?
Yeah, pretty much. More comprehensive we are, more components we monitor, the better interpretation we receive from the solution, the better sense of security we've got. And of course, there could be a very nice conversation about, okay, but couldn't that lead to the false sense of security because we trust solution that we did not really test, and we don't even know that that solution is doing a good job? Absolutely. But as I mentioned, sometimes we don't have a choice. The more security personnel we got to assist that process, the better. The more analysis of the logs that we got, or annual, every 6-month checks, the review of the configuration of our monitoring solution, that's also needed. So it's a kind of like a pen testing, but in terms of monitoring, yeah. And then you are testing various roles, verifying whether the things are discovered. So that would be the smart approach for that. But I think we are just like, as an industry, we are slowly getting there, but that process definitely started. So monitoring wasn't really that much of a case in the past. Like when we even think about a couple of years ago, how could we live without knowing what executes on our servers? We were not monitoring processes. We were not monitoring where do they connect to, whether they are elevated or not, what's the parent process ID, and so on. Like what are the details, command line, what kind of account it runs on, and stuff like that. Like when I, for example, do forensics and there's an incident and we were supposed to at first analyze what happened, I look at one of the servers and I do not see the process tracking. Not that I'm surprised, but it's a little disappointing.
Yeah, Sysmon for the win. Josh, you have a question?
Of course.
I mean, I love how you're putting the idea of automation, and you're integrating it into pen testing without intuitively. I see so many pen tests like automated pen testing is never going to come around. And it's like, it's inevitable. We don't have enough people. We have the need to pen test more often and more often and more often. And let's be honest, continuous security is absolutely necessary these days. You have to be pen testing on a constant basis. Who can afford that? So there's going to be some automation that's going to assist a manual pen test, a human pen tester, in doing their job.
But Josh, I heard that there was a company out there at RSA that could do a pen test in 6 clicks and do it better than a 20-year seasoned pen tester.
I hear a lot of lies.
Who said that?
If you want me to dig it up, I will. But yeah, it was.
Please do, because I would love to rip them to shreds.
They have been ripped suitably. Also, because they also called out a name of a specific person that said, like, yeah, there's no way that this can happen. So they said, well, fine, we'll set up a challenge. My 6-year-old will click 6 buttons. Actually, they said it was 3. And I bet they can pen test a Class B subnet faster than you can. And better.
No. Okay.
Yeah,
that's an interesting point.
Thing.
Yep.
Faster is not better. Sorry, Paul, you were going exactly the same place.
But they said faster and better. But they also used that person's image, and that they said that they would be in the challenge when they had no idea. So there was a little bit of
wow.
Yeah, a little. Yeah. Let me get you a
little drama. Yeah. We don't need to mention them on air, but yeah. Anyway,
douche freighters.
Douche freighters.
But I think.
I bet the 6-click version did it with less alcohol.
Probably.
Right.
Probably.
So that's a question, Paula. How much alcohol is ideal for a pen tester?
Oh wow.
Unlimited amount, as long as you can use your keyboard and brain.
Good answer.
Slivovitz or
vodka.
Is vodka? I was going to say in Poland, I've had some Polish vodka. I actually had a couple of friends from Poland.
Plum brandy.
Yeah.
The bison grass, the żubrówka.
I think that was one. It's been a while. I actually think they moved back they moved out of state. They didn't move back to Poland, but they moved out of state. But yeah.
You know that many people are wondering why it's yellow.
Is it aged? Is that why it's yellow? Is it aged in something before they bottle it?
Theoretically, the color comes from the grass, but what happened to the grass before, nobody knows, and it's called the bison grass, so żubrówka, yeah? So there's like a little joke about that.
I gotcha. I see.
Oh. Oh,
Is there animals on the anyway?
Stuff.
it's kind of like
Polish vodka is awesome though.
Yes,
it's
but it's very
vodka's
tasty.
good.
yes.
Not
Polish
that
vodka's amazing, even.
it's hard to work and drink outside at the same time, but why not? And we had some moments where we we were actually drinking wine because some of the stuff was already unbearable. So when things become unbearable, that's the moment where we can allow ourselves for a small beer.
Yeah, tell us some stories from the trench. Pen testers have some of the best stories. Obviously, don't disclose anything that I'm not digging for stuff you shouldn't be talking about. But if you could sanitize a story or two, that'd be great.
Yeah, actually, there are truly many stories, but I think one of my favorite stories was with an administrator who was actually sabotaging the network, and my job was to also with the team figure out whether that's true or not. And there was a situation where 3 out of 3 Active Directory domain controllers went down. And this was already a little suspicious. And this guy was actually coming all in white, happy to fix everything, and everybody loved him. So that actually happened a couple of times. So he knew and he fixed everything, and everything was so working and pretty. Therefore, when another accident or incident happened, there's supposed to be done an analysis, and it's very hard because you are literally like pen testing / analyzing the network. You are trying to figure out ways, things that you don't really know what you are looking for. So kind of like a needle in a haystack. And eventually what we found out is that in this guy's laptop, there were gaps in his event log, which means that he was booting up most probably from the bootable, like a USB device, where he had a live operating system from which he was targeting computers in his own infrastructure. And that was actually time-wise correlating with moments when Active Directories were actually down. So at the end, of course, after more of the investigation, we actually wrote a couple of tools also during that project that we are using till today. And we learned, of course, that this was this guy. And the funny part is that he was not really fired, but he was dismissed because they were a little bit more afraid that maybe there is another point of entry that we don't know. And there was actually, there was an access point that he established so that when he's driving next to the company, he doesn't have to get to the office. He just connects to his private Wi-Fi and he fixes the infrastructure.
Wow. I had a similar experience. Now, did you know when you engaged this company, did you know that they were suspecting someone? And did they suspect that person? They tell you beforehand, or they're just like, "There's weird stuff going on. We need you to investigate."
Yeah. So I knew that, but of course I tried to be completely neutral. But this was also the guy that welcomed us at the gate.
Yes.
And he was smiling too much, like almost like there's a whole fire behind. Yeah, there's like a meme even like this. There's a whole fire.
Yes.
Everything is just collapsing, and he's like, "Hello, welcome to my beautiful office." Yeah. So it was a little weird.
Yeah, I was.
He was hitting the vodka too hard.
I was hired for a pen test once, and I started immediately working with the team that was there, and then getting into systems. And then the CISO pulled me aside, and he was like, "Yeah, so I didn't expect you to work with the team because we kind of, we had someone that we kind of expected wasn't up to par, or maybe not doing enough to secure the network." Lo and behold, that person was like going right behind me and trying to patch everything, as I was going. I'm like, it was like one of my moments where I'm like, you know what? That's on me. Like, you should have told me. But secondly, like on me, every time now after that, when an engagement, I'm like, do you want your people to know or not? Like, I have to ask that up front. I'm sure you learned this years ago too, right? Like, I have to ask up front, who should know that there's a pen test going on, and specifically give me the list of people that you don't want to know, so I don't interact with them as the pen tester. So
yeah, totally. There are many situations like this, and I also was doing the pen test in like a factory environment, and there was a very nice administrator who was working within this infrastructure for over like 20 years. So he was like there. That was his baby. And he literally came to work like at 6 a.m. and he was going home at like 10 p.m. So very specific situation. And definitely when I was doing the pen test, I was hurting his baby. So every time I was like sitting in a room, he was like, I had a door open, he was passing by, and he was just literally asking the question all the time, like, oh, did you manage to get in? And like, well, not yet. 5 minutes later, because he was just about to bring the tea. So, or go to the restroom, or bring another tea, or he had so many reasons to go by that door. And he was always like, did you manage to get in? And actually, there was a moment, of course, when I said yes. And he was like completely wasted. And he's like, so what happened? And I said, well, I'm the administrator already. And I didn't say really which one, whether it's a domain or local. And he's like, oh, what's the password? And I was actually local admin. And I said the password, and he's like, oh no, so you are a domain admin.
Because his local admin was the same as the domain.
He was reusing the password. And like, this is the first time I saw a guy crying over that.
He broke down in tears? No way. Oh, he broke down in tears? Seriously?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So sad, right? Funny, but sad. So like I'm more on the funny side of this. I was like, so yeah.
You just need a T-shirt.
Cool.
My pen tests bring grown men to tears.
Exactly. Exactly. And then later on, I was finding so many things that were just misconfigured. And because he was in this infrastructure for such a long time, I said like, hey, listen, you've got this issue over there. And he's like, I know. So why you still have it? Because like I didn't manage to fix it in time. Like, what was this time? 10 years? So like it was definitely the pen test was needed.
You said he was working from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. all the time, but you couldn't manage to figure out how to like implement laps, for example.
Right. Mm-hmm. So ironically, I think that it's like the more time you spend, the less productive it becomes. And there were many issues over there, but definitely labs wasn't there.
That's really funny. We have time for just 5 more questions. Paula, are you ready to play 5 questions with Security Weekly?
Mm-hmm.
No right or wrong answer. They're just silly questions. All right, ready? 3 words to describe yourself.
Patient, persistent, knowledgeable.
If you were a serial killer, what would be your weapon of choice?
Keyboard.
If you wrote a book about yourself, what would the title be?
Oh, that was interesting. Probably something like The Road Through Hell to achieve the moment of silence.
Nice. If you, what is your favorite hacker movie?
I like Angelina Jolie. Yeah.
Hackers. That's what I thought. You mentioned her earlier. I was hoping you're in the hackers camp. I'm in the hackers camp, so it's good. Choose 2 celebrities to be your parents.
Alive, dead, fictional, or otherwise.
Oh, that's going to be definitely Rocket that I have in the background. That would be my dad. And my mom, that would be still probably Angelina Jolie.
I love it.
Yeah, I would like to inherit some of the things.
That's all amazing. Paula, thank you so much for appearing on Paul Security Weekly.
Thank you. Absolutely a pleasure.
With that, we'll take a short break, come back with the security news, and we'll dispel some FUD coming up next.